This is Weather Authority Weekday.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm Meteorologist Mark Collins. Thanks for joining us here on the 6 de Mayo, the day after Cinco de Mayo. Full of tacos. Well, it's going to feel hot like Mexico here today as temperatures will be approaching near 90 degrees. What's new, right? But you know what's been really nice are these mornings. Have you been up? Are you an early riser? Then you know what I'm talking about. The cool mornings that we've been feeling out there, but it's been quite dry, and the lack of humidity is going to make these temperatures skyrocket back into the 90s. Let's show you what I'm seeing there on the satellite. And well, not a lot of cloud cover, but there are some clouds out to the west, and they're going to be building in through the day, but that's not going to be much to hold down the heat. But going back to the nice weather we had this morning, 57 for 2 mornings in a row. That's how low it got. Notice out towards our areas out in Baker County, down into the mid 50s, feeling oh so nice. That is something we would never ever see in August. We would have the humidity. Yes, we'd have temperatures reaching 88 to 90 degrees in the afternoon, even warmer than that, but we wouldn't have dew points as low as they are. So we will start to see that moisture come back. And are you ready for some rain? I bet you are. Notice this forecast has no rain in it, but areas to our south might see a few isolated showers. But get ready for rain to move into Jacksonville starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Careful what you wish for, because some of those downpours could really add up, and they'll be persistent day after day as we kickstart what could be the beginning of a rainy season. So we are looking at partly cloudy skies today. Today is the day to get that yard work done. If you don't want ruts in your yard, we're not expecting to see any significant rainfall in our area, but we need the rain because it has been so dry out there. We've had really warm days, and without a lot of rainfall, that's making the grass look pretty dry. Now, some of you scored over the weekend. In fact, we had some good soakers coming through southern Georgia into Nassau County. If you were out at the Shrimp Fest, you probably were caught by a few downpours. Also in St. Augustine, there was some rain over the weekend. But I think today you might be able to see some rain in St. Johns County. It's going to be very isolated, but those showers, notice here, about a 30 to 40% from St. Augustine down towards Flagler County over to Palatka. These are kind of the bullseye locations where some pop-up storms would happen, most likely after about 3 o'clock. And then those odds really taper off. I think 20% here in Jacksonville is a little optimistic. This is a future forecast model that shows how really things look pretty dry. But then around 5 o'clock, notice what's happening there right around the Clay, Putnam County line. A few pop-up showers. Try to get going here, but they're only on like one cylinder. So they're going to struggle to hold together, and that's why rain chances are pretty slim to none here on this Tuesday. But starting Wednesday, what's down to our south is going to be coming north, and that's the sticky air. That's the first ingredient for getting some rainfall. So we need the humidity to increase. And notice the deficits that we have had. We have not had much humidity. In fact, that's made fire weather risks high, but we are running a deficit of between 1 to 2 inches here in the greater Jacksonville area. But what's ahead could completely erase that going forward. So we're talking Wednesday through the weekend into early next week. If we get into this rain pattern where we get these daily downpours, we might get a quarter to a half inch here and there, and then it can all add up to over an inch in some spots here over the next 3 days. Right now, it looks like the higher rains will be closer to our southern zones from around Clay and St. Johns County point southward, but we could have some individualized amounts adding up to about an inch even around the Jacksonville area. This is the big broad picture here showing what's happening through the day today. So this is 6:30 tonight. You see most of the rain in central Florida and to our south. There's also another cluster right there that is over Louisiana. That's that warm front riding northward. Once that swings up into the Tennessee Valley, it's going to open up the corridor for moisture to work its way into North Florida and southern Georgia, so that Wednesday, scattered showers, but notice Thursday here, much more coverage of those greens and yellows, indicating the potential for some good soakers tracking back towards the coast. And then not just the moisture that increases, but we'll actually have a frontal system coming close to us on Friday as low pressure moves to the north. So that's two ingredients, two extra mechanisms to cause rain. So I look, when I make my probability of precipitation forecast, I try to look at all the different things that typically cause weather to rain. And so since we have the moisture, since we have a frontal system, and we have the heating in the 90s, that's three things that put the rain chance up around 90%. So I feel pretty confident Friday is going to be one of our wetter days into Saturday as well, because that front will still be lingering into the area. So let's walk you through the forecast process. So I told you the process. Here's the output. As we head through today, we're still not humid enough to get those downpours. Maybe those isolated showers to our south, but it's going to be quite warm. Temperatures will be in the upper 80s. And then starting Wednesday, as kids come home from school, they're going out to play some after-school sports. You may have to watch for some lightning because thunderstorms will start to develop around 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thursday, we're still looking at rain and storms, probably a little bit better coverage. And then Friday with that front to our north, that's why rain chances are really, really high. But notice what it does to the temperatures. We're dropping back down into the low 80s. So we're going to feel pretty good here by Friday into the upcoming weekend, but it's going to be wet. Now, over the past weekend, we had a good chunk of dry weather, and then those storms came in late. I think once those storms get going, it's going to be kind of rainy right into the evening hours for both Saturday and Sunday. But we need the rain, and that's a forecast that really shakes things up from the dry weather pattern that we've been at. All right, so coming up, we are going to talk about where in the world is Richard Nunn. We're going to talk about bears in downtown St. Augustine, and a few other things that I have on my mind. So stay tuned after the break. Come back for more. Hey, we're back, and we are enjoying the day, enjoying the nice weather. Hopefully the hurricane season stays pretty quiet. You know, I talked about where in the world is Richard Nunn. Tonight, you're going to see Michelle McCormick on air filling in for him because he's in Lakeland. Why Lakeland? Well, that's where the NOAA Hurricane Hunters, the Operations Center, is based. It moved from MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, a little bit further inland. Kind of makes sense, right? Because MacDill's on Tampa Bay. So it's more inland, and that's where they fly out the P-3 hurricane reconnaissance planes, also the Gulfstream jets that do the surrounding storm measurements. This is a view of a P-3 flying into a hurricane, and he's going to be talking to some of the flight directors, the meteorologists that fly into these hurricanes, because the data that they harvest goes back into the forecast models, and it makes the forecast better. Imagine trying to forecast a hurricane and not knowing what that inner core is doing. The only way to find out what the strongest part of the storm is reacting to, the pressure, the winds, is to fly in there and take in situ measurements. And so they fly in, there's a little hole in the bottom of the plane, they shoot out these dropsondes, and it measures the wind, the atmospheric pressure, and the humidity. And all that information goes back into the forecast models, and it comes up with some of these products. You've seen it, it's called a hurricane cone. And those cones are more reliable when there is reconnaissance data. In fact, this was Hurricane Ian, and this was before the outer environment was sampled by the Gulfstream jets. Notice how the cone was aiming towards Tampa. Then, after the new data went in it, notice how the cone shifted south closer to where the storm made landfall in Fort Myers. So with that extra data, it has been shown that the improvements in forecast accuracy is 15 to 30%. So that is why it is critical that the NOAA flies these missions, because it makes the forecasts more precise. And a difference of just, say, 75 miles can save millions and millions of dollars by not having to evacuate Tampa Bay unnecessarily. You know, Tampa Bay had a negative storm surge, yet that first cone showed massive destruction and surge moving up into Tampa Bay when it never really was a problem, with that storm making more of a problem for Fort Myers. So interesting stuff. That's where Richard is going to be today, so you'll be able to tune in and see him with that story for our hurricane special. Also, did you hear about bears in St. Augustine. This is amazing. Take a look at this video on St. George Street. Black bear. I think he was looking for that ice cream shop. You know, all the smells of honey in the candy stores. Maybe that's why he was roaming the streets at night. But this was pretty crazy. The St. Augustine Police Department, along with FWC, is on the scene right now as I speak because they feel the bear is in the Lincolnville area. You know, that area is kind of surrounded by water. So maybe there is a bear still on the loose. Look how cute he is. You can see in that photo his face. He just wants to chill in the backyard. You know, I mean, heck, people from all over the country come to St. Augustine. Why not the bears? It's kind of a circus act, right? Well, let's just hope he doesn't bite. In fact, just the other day, there was a man down near the Everglades who was killed. There was a bear down there. He was an older man in his 80s, but the bear came into his mobile home while he slept, mauled the poor victim, and then his dog was chained outside, and that dog was killed as well. I'm going to show you some interesting stats on the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And this is, first let me show you a map here. And it's kind of hard to see, but if you go to FWC, there are ways to look at all the bear sightings around the state. And so I was curious, and I wanted to see just how many bears were in the St. Augustine. And here is one that popped up from 1999. There was a bear in St. Johns County, and actually that was very close to where this current bear is being sighted, near the campus of Flagler College. Also up around Jack's Beach, there were some bear sightings there. There were actually several bear sightings in Jack's Beach over the years. And then as we back the view out, these blue dots, so here were two there in Jack's Beach, another one on Beach Boulevard, another one near Bishop Kenny High School. But really, these are kind of the rare sites. Take a look out towards the Osceola National Forest. You see many sightings there. Also the Ocala National Forest, there's some sightings. But this is a sad map here. You can see how there are these linear lines, and they correspond to some of the highways and interstates around Florida. These are all the bear mortality statistics. So when you look at how many sightings there are versus how many dead bears there are, the dead bears definitely outweigh the sightings. But you can see the hot spots here around the Ocala National Forest, where all the roads cut through there. There's a lot of bear fatalities. Also down along the Everglades, along Tamiami Trail, right here, 41, cutting through the Everglades, and also Alligator Alley. Look at all these bear deaths in that area. So you can kind of see a connection from the Everglades up to the Ocala National Forest. And there is a thing called the Florida Wildlife Corridor, and their goal is to create a zone where bears can move throughout the state unimpeded by interstate. So they've been really vocal in building underpasses along some of the interstates like I-4, so wildlife can cross through there. Think about the panthers, the Florida black bears, because before there were roads, animals roamed up and down the state, and those green areas are some of the corridors that they're looking to achieve by buying up some of the land and making some progress there for the migration patterns of bear. So we'll keep you posted on if that bear is caught in St. Augustine, but maybe he's just trying to find the beach. I found the beach here this past week, and I was able to teach one of our reporters how to surf. It was bigger than what we have out there, but we went to the poles, and here's Caleb Yager. This is his first time surfing, kind of shows, right? But we did a special Sunday morning about all of the fun things to do. That's me surfing some slop, junky wind slop at the poles. But you know what? That's kind of good to learn on, a little whitewater stuff. And there's Caleb. He caught the drift down south. But he managed to, well, get back to the shore all in one piece. And I think he had fun. So day one is always a little challenging, but there's day two, and hopefully he gets to stand up. Also, we talked to Mike Wisnick. You can check out this interview on newsforjacks.com. He is a shaping guru. He has been making my boards for over 20 years. So I didn't realize that he was nominated as someone that we should go and talk to, since he is a local businessman on Atlantic Beach. And I said, hey, if you're going to do that story, let me talk to him, because he is the water cooler of the beaches. You go in there, you're not leaving without a good story. And he was showing me some of his latest board designs, and that's about a 7 or 8 minute story. So if you're curious about how surfboards are made, you should check that out, because unlike golf clubs, tennis rackets, all the sporting equipment that you would see in any type of sporting store, it's made by machines, it comes out of a factory. These are all handcrafted pieces of art, and it's a very time-consuming process to make a surfboard. But if you're in the market for one and you want to get a design, you've got something like that, hey, that's the guy to go to, because he can put it on the board and make it just the way you want. So I'll keep you posted on the next swell. Nothing on the horizon, just that rain that I talked about. So get set for a greener yard here as we head through this upcoming work week. All right, thanks for watching us here on the Weather Authority weekday. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.